Part 54. Building the Prophet's Mosque, Al-Masjid al-Nabawi. The Prophet continued to Medina, and the Ansar heard of his imminent arrival and rushed to greet him. The children of Medina were running in the streets, yelling, "The Messenger of Allah has arrived." Even the young women ascended to the top of their houses, asking,
"Which one of them is he? Which one of them is he?"
The arrival of the Prophet in Medina signified a new era in Islamic history, that of strength, growth, and excitement. The Prophet's arrival was an event that engulfed the entirety of Medina. In anticipation, the Ansar would head to the outskirts of the city every morning and wait until the midday heat was too strong to remain outside. When the Prophet did arrive, a Jewish worker plucking dates from the top of a tree was the first to notice, and in his excitement he yelled,
"O Arabs, your king has arrived!"
The fact that even the Jews of Medina were excited was a testament to the atmosphere at the time. However, it is also noteworthy that he said, "your king," and not "our king," indicating that the Jews were under the impression that the Prophet would only be ruling the Aus and Hazraj. This misunderstanding would resurface, which will be addressed as it occurs in the Seerah. Abdullah ibn Salam, one of the most senior rabbis in Medina who converted to Islam, narrated the first hadith reported in Medina.
When the Prophet entered Medina, the people rushed to see him, and I was of the first to arrive. As soon as I saw his face clearly, I knew that this was not the face of a liar. The first thing I heard him say was, "Spread peace, feed the people, be good to your relatives, and pray at night when the people are sleeping. You will enter paradise with peace."
This hadith was famously known as the Hadith of Salam, peace, by Abdullah ibn Salam. When the Prophet entered the city, the Ansar would all plead with him to stay in their home, pulling his camel in every direction. The Prophet let go of his camel and said, "Let the camel be, as Allah has taken care of it. That is, Allah will decide." The camel stopped in a particular place, and the Prophet understood that this is where his mosque would be built. The Prophet's concern and priority was to build a mosque before he had even thought about his own house. The Prophet then said, "Whose house from our family members is closest?" He had distant cousins in Medina, from the Banu Najjar tribe, another indication that Medina was planned by Allah to be his safe haven, as ties of familiarity were already built. Khalid ibn Zayd, known famously as Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, rose up and proclaimed his lineage to the Banu Najjar and ecstatically claimed his right to host the Prophet. The Prophet lived with Abu Ayyub for 6 months while the mosque was being built. Allah blessed Abu Ayyub with a 2-story house, which allowed him to accommodate the Prophet. Abu Ayyub and his wife occupied the top floor, while the Prophet and Abu Bakr occupied the ground floor. One night, Abu Ayyub knocked over some water, and they began to panic that a single drop of water may fall onto the Prophet, so they stayed up the whole night soaking their blankets to dry the water. On another occasion, Abu Ayyub said,
"It suddenly occurred to me that we were walking above the head of the Prophet."
Abu Ayyub and his wife then spent the remainder of the night cramped in the corner of the room to ensure that they did not walk or stand over the Prophet. The next morning they requested that the Prophet move to the top floor. The Prophet said that the ground floor was easier, as he would frequently receive guests and conduct meetings. Abu Ayyub did not relent, insisting,
"Never, O Messenger of Allah, can we be above a roof that is above you."
It was also the habit of Abu Ayyub and his wife to cook food, send it to the Prophet to eat, and finish the leftovers. Whenever the plate was returned, Abu Ayyub asked,
"From which place did the Prophet eat?"
He would then ensure that he ate from the exact same place. Before the Prophet began building on the plot of land where the camel stopped, he asked, "Who does this land belong to?" It belonged to 2 orphans, Sahal and Suhail, who had inherited the land from their late father, but did not yet put it to use. They said,
"O Messenger of Allah, this is a gift from us."
But the Prophet, in a manner befitting a messenger of God, refused to accept it as a gift, and instead purchased it. The companions began building the mosque, and the Prophet ordered that the old tree stumps in the ground be repurposed as the front and back walls of the mosque. The remaining 2 sides of the mosque were built with clay bricks, and the roof was made of date palm leaves. The roof only covered half the mosque, and this remained the case for a few years. Eventually, the Prophet ordered that a full roof be built. However, even that roof was only purposed to protect the worshippers from the heat of the sun. It was not sufficient a cover to protect from the rain or cold. In the 8th year of Hijrah, for example, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri narrated that the entire mosque was flooded due to rainwater, and the ground became extremely muddy. The companions wondered how they would prostrate in the heavy mud until Abu Sa'id al-Khudri said,
"For by Allah, I saw the Prophet prostrate into the mud, and the mud was on his forehead and nose."
The Prophet's mosque remained in this state for the entirety of his life, as well as the reign of Abu Bakr al-Siddiq. Umar's caliphate saw some reinforcements to the mosque, but the first major expansion was under the rule of Uthman many years later. The companions formed a line to carry out the work, and the Prophet was a part of the line. The companions then recited a line of poetry.
"For us to sit as the Prophet works, how misguided our actions would be."
They continued to recite lines of poetry while they worked, and the Prophet joined them. "O Allah, there is no good except the good of the hereafter, so have mercy on the Ansar and the Muhajira." It took 2 weeks to build the mosque, and it was a very large mosque for its time, spanning 100 by 130 feet. It had 3 main public entrances: the Door of Mercy on the south side, the Door of Jibril on the west side, and the Door of Women on the east side. There were also a number of private entrances for those whose houses connected directly to the mosque. On his deathbed, the Prophet said, "Every single private door to the mosque shall be locked and sealed, except the door of Abu Bakr." Scholars interpret this statement as one of the Prophet's implicit instructions that Abu Bakr succeed him in leadership, for all doors, that is, paths, are to close except that of Abu Bakr.